sinners, and saints. Dust off those horns and halos. It's time for Alan After Dark.
Sinners, saints, bitches, whores, sluts, skanks, pole smokers, ass munchers. How are my people doing tonight? How are you feeling? Are you feeling good? Are you feeling sexy? Are you feeling horny? And I hope you are, if you want to be. And for God's sakes, I sound like a Baptist preacher, don't I? What the fuck is going on with me tonight? I can't tell you, except for that I'm excited about it being the weekend, okay? This is what we do, right? Everybody's working for the weekend, unless you're in service. And if you're in service, the weekend tends to be Monday and Tuesday. And that's okay too, you know. A weekend is how you define it. It's what you make it. And I am psyched for some reason, beyond explanation, for this weekend. It may be because it's been a rough week and people have been extra stupid this week, and it feels like the world is coming to an end, which really does seem appropriate since we are in the Halloween season. And you know how we are here at Alan After Dark. We celebrate Halloween all month long, full throttle. This year will not be any different. I've talked about how it seems like for whatever holiday it is, our mentality sort of changes to fit that spirit of that holiday. For Halloween, to me, it's always felt like we sort of psych ourselves up to be scared, afraid, nervous, wary of people, suspicious. It's part of the environment, the air of illusion, if I can say it that way. It's just part of the novelty of the holiday. Even though I don't look at Halloween as a novelty, it is my favorite holiday. And if we could, I would celebrate it all year long. Isn't that the fun part of being in our community? On any given weekend, you could wear any kind of outfit, costume you want. You might get some looks from some people, but it's just kind of celebrated. Everybody can dress any way they want, have a good time, be as freaky and wild or as reserved as you want, and it's all acceptable. So in a lot of ways, drag, in every form of drag, is like celebrating Halloween. And that's a good thing to me. It's not a bad thing to me. But as I was thinking about what we were going to talk about to kick off the Halloween season, I really did hone in on my memories of some of the scariest experiences I've had. So let's take a trip back in time and take a look at some of my scariest experiences I've had in gay clubs and out in the outside world. Did that make sense? I hope so. Now, for all the new listeners to Alan After Dark, I just want to provide a little bit of background about how I came into my own in the clubs. I'm a small town country boy who came to the big city and was terrified that first night, so much so that I drove around the block about 7 times before I parked and decided to go in to the club. I was not sure what I would experience, but I was just blown away by the number of people that wound up coming. I anticipated 3 or 4, maybe 10 people, but there were hundreds that came to the club that night, and it just changed my life. With that experience, I had to grow in my streetwise sensibilities. I was very naive, and I guess I thought that the gay community was its own separate entity where everybody had the best interest of everybody else at heart, and that there would not be jealousies and tribalism and cliques and things. But I grew to understand that there were, and that's just part of life in general. Doesn't matter if you're gay, straight, whatever. But the other part about it really did surprise me, and it took me some time to understand that it could be a dangerous place, even though 99.9% of the time you were as safe there as you were in your own home with the doors locked. But it's that 0.1% that I had to learn and really become street smart very, very quickly. And I'm lucky I did. So that helped me to survive. I know I'm sounding very dramatic, but there were things that happened in the clubs that you just never would expect. let's just not forget the serial killer, Jeffrey Dahmer, who hunted in the clubs in Milwaukee, where the community knew something was off about him, but they couldn't put it all together. And Jeffrey Dahmer was able to kill 17 men and cannibalize them from the guys he met in these clubs and bars. One of the experiences later on in my club career, I was going to one of the biggest dance clubs in town. And I'll just say this, I tend to wind up being friends with people who own these clubs. I like having that relationship with them, not for any purpose, just to be able to know who they are and get a feel for what kind of people they are and if I can trust them. In every instance, I do trust and care for the ones who've owned these clubs. Well, one night at this club, it was getting toward midnight. One of the owners of the clubs come over and he just said, we have this person who needs a ride back to his hotel. Would you mind giving him a ride back? And when you come back, we'll cover the rest of your tab. And I was like, well, hell yeah, I'll do it. Now, I assumed that this person was a friend of theirs. I had no idea that they just wanted someone to drive him back to the hotel, that they didn't even know who he was. They just wanted him out of the club, and he didn't have money for a cab, and nobody else would do it, and so they came to me. Stupid me said, yeah, I'll do it. I haul his drunk ass out into the car, put him in, get the seatbelt fastened. The owner had told me what hotel he was staying at and where it was, and so off we go. And you know how it is with drunk guys sometimes. They're either just slurring their words or swearing, angry, or they can be quite sexually aggressive. I had him fastened in with a seatbelt, so all he could do was reach over to try to grope me, and I would just pick his hand up and put it back and just say, we're almost there. Just relax and everything. We'll get you into your room and everything will be fine. So I pull into the hotel parking lot and he kind of points over and he says, I'm on the first floor on this side of the building. I'm like, all well and good. Pull in to the closest parking space and I unfastened his seatbelt and reached over and unlocked the door. He grabs me by the arm and says, please, can you help me in? Because I'm afraid I'll fall. And I was like, well, okay, I'll help you in. So I get out of the car, go around the other side, open the door, pull him out and pull his arm over my shoulders, around my neck. And here we go. My hand around his waist, holding him up as he staggers and stuff. And I said, do you have your key? And he goes, yeah, it's in my pocket. I'm like, okay, good. We'll get it out. I can't reach it. We get to the room number he told me, and it's down inside, down a hallway, and I have to reach into his pocket. And of course, he makes some kind of grunt and like, oh, yeah, man, my dick is right there. I'm like, just fuck off. And I pull the key out and get the door open and go in, and I try to help him in and sit him down on this little sofa. Actually, the hotel room was quite impressive. It had this little living room area and the bed, and it was nice. And I get him flopped down on that couch, and he says, can you get me a glass of water? So I go over to the sink, and I turn around, and he's not sitting on the sofa. And I'm like, hey, where'd you go? I step over to the sofa, and I just happen to look over toward the door, and he's standing there, and he's locking it. I looked at him, and I said, what are you doing? This is the point where things really changed. He wasn't so drunk. He spoke in a clear voice, no slurring anything. He said, I thought you wanted to have some fun. And I'm like, no, I'm not in any mood. I promised Terry that I would get you to the hotel and I'm done, okay? And it's time for me to go. And he just says, blocking the door, you're not going anywhere. Of course, all my senses are heightened. I'm getting tense and I try to stay calm. And I just say to him, what did you just say? And he said, you're not going anywhere. And he starts walking toward me. The sofa's between us. And I'm like, I don't know what you think's going on here, but no, I'm leaving this damn room and you better get out of my way. And so I start around the sofa on the opposite side of where he's coming. And I realize he's been faking being drunk. He might have had a little liquor in him, but he was faking it. he had some other motivation or intention for this whole thing, and it didn't matter who it was going to be. Whoever it was going to be his target. Well, unfortunately for him, I'm quite capable of taking care of myself in most cases. He lunged for me, and I basically moved to the side, whacked him upside the head. He flipped over the couch and smashed into the glass coffee table, shattering it. I said, "Are you all right?" He goes, "Yeah, motherfucker. What the hell did you do that for?" I'm like, "You know why I did it. Fuck you. I'm the fuck out of here." I walk over and unlock the door and walk out and slam it shut. I drive straight back to the club. I get in Terry's face and I'm like, "Motherfucker, the guy tried to assault me." "Oh, that's not possible, Alan. He was drunk. You could have dropped him anyway." I was like, "Well, if you'd have seen it, you would have known better, because he was faking it." And I just said, "Bitches, my tab is free for the next 3 weeks, and I am never, ever doing something like that for you again." I really remembered that night when I got home just thinking, that could have been really bad. He could have killed me. I felt foolish for turning my back on him when I was getting him a glass of water, but I genuinely thought that he was really falling down drunk. That was a lesson learned, that the only way to learn it would be to experience it. And trust me, that experience heightened my instincts. And I became really good at reading people at that point. And I think that works for all of us. We all gain through experience and grow to understand and, to be honest, become more cynical. And you all know, I've said it 1,000 times, I am a very cynical person. I rarely trust anybody. And that's no offense to any of you. It's just the way I am. That cynicism, that lack of trust can keep you alive. One of the most, I think, scary times is when you're leaving a club. Now, if you're in the LGBTQIA community, you know how dangerous it can be if you are a party of one. And when you're leaving the club and you're walking down the street or into the parking lot where it's dark and there's lots of shadows and corners, it can be quite dangerous. You never know who could be lurking in any corner at any time. Yeah, it's great that they might have security cameras, but a security camera can't stop someone from assaulting you or killing you. I remember several times leaving the club alone, little tipsy, and hearing footsteps behind me, and then looking and then not seeing anybody, but you know you heard footsteps. You know somebody's back there. And so you kind of kick it in high gear and walk a little faster, and then sometimes you start running, because you never know what the motivation is for a person. You don't. I've known enough men who have been assaulted, beaten, raped, and murdered to be extra cautious and wary of anybody. And I have to say, though, that if there is such a thing as a guardian angel, that mine probably is in rehab, because there were times when I was younger and first really exploring my sexuality and hooking up quite a few times with people, going home with them. Any one of them could have been a killer, a robber, or some type of criminal. I was fortunate. I never had anything like that specifically happen to me, aside from the time that the hustler tried to lift my wallet. There have been a couple more times when I realized how foolish I was and how lucky I was to escape unharmed. And I know some of you are probably saying, "Why didn't you go to the police?" Well, it's a very simple answer. Back then, at the time this happened, where I live, the police are very homophobic. The mayor was anti-gay everything. And to be honest, it was my word against his. Yes, there's a broken table and a commotion. I couldn't have proved anything. So why would I set myself up for all that headache and exposure for nothing? Because that's essentially what would happen. Because I didn't have a bruise or damage to me physically, they weren't going to do anything about that. They really weren't. I know everybody wants to live in a fantasy world, but this was reality. And reality was that as a gay person, you were pretty much on your own unless you could show and prove that you had physical harm done to you. It's just a fact of life as it was then, pure and simple. And that's the cases that I know of where there was an attempted prosecution of someone. I know people who were assaulted. I know people who've been raped. I know someone who was murdered, and his killer basically received probation. The cynicism that I'm talking about that can keep you safe from harm, it also tells you that sometimes what's the point of trying to get justice through the police when you know damn well what the results are going to be. Now, don't get me wrong, had I been assaulted, physically beaten, or hurt, I would have definitely gone to the police. And I actually was expecting him to go to the police. He didn't, of course, but he would have had to explain why it happened, and I would have explained what really happened, and they would have to decide what was going on there. So anyway, that kind of lays the groundwork for the cynicism that I talk about all the time. I've mentioned it before that the clubs, whether it be gay, straight, whatever, they are unfortunately a hunting ground for predators. And I don't mean just sexual predators, I mean pickpockets, robbers, thieves, all types. I remember taking one of my best girlfriends to the club. It was one of her first experiences in a gay club and a dance club in general, really. We were dancing and I went to go get a drink, and I was coming back with my drink and I saw this girl talking to my friend, we'll call her Rebecca, and I saw Rebecca open her purse and hand her like a dollar bill or something. And I went running over and I was like, "What did you do?" And she goes, "Well, the girl asked me for $1." I'm like, "Honey, they were actually just checking you out to see how much cash they could see in your purse. They were hoping that you had a whole lot. And they were deciding on whether or not you would be worth targeting for robbery." She goes, "What?" I'm like, "Yep, I'm sorry this happened, but it even happens in places like this that are really safe. This is a safe club to go to. Lots of security, lots of protection, but it still happens because these people are professional. This is their job." And it really opened her eyes about how to be even more careful when you think it's just a courteous moment. I remember one time I was with coworkers in London, England. We were walking back to the hotel. The boss was with us. A gentleman approached us and asked my boss for the time. "What time is it?" And he looks at his watch and tells the guy the time. And the guy says, "Thank you," and walks on. And I just look at him and I'm like, "Dan, didn't you think that was a little bit odd? Someone just coming up to you and asking you for the time?" And he's like, "No, why would I?" I said, "Turn around and look at the building behind us." And he turns around and he sees a big giant clock on the face of this building. And he goes, "Well, that is weird." I'm like, he was scoping you out to see what kind of watch you had. If it was a Rolex or something like that, he had every intention of calculating a time to rob you. He was like, "Oh, come on, Alan. It's not like that." I'm like, "Yes, it is." Now, maybe I was wrong in both counts, with Rebecca and with Dan, but do you really want to take that chance? And I thought, was it only my little voice whispering to me to be suspicious of these two people? In both cases, we were lucky there were several of us together. And so it would be very unlikely that someone would attempt a blatant robbery with so many potential witnesses and defenders. If you have a group, you may have to fight, and that's just the way it is, okay? And I hate when people say, "Well, don't put yourself in that type of situation." Well, you should be able to walk down the streets, no matter what time of day or night it is, without being afraid to be robbed, pillaged, or murdered. And in most cases, it is safe. It is. A lot of the cities in the United States are much safer than some people want to portray. Of course, there's areas that we all know that you do not travel into at night. There are always places that have higher crime rates that you know that you should avoid. That's just a fact of life. I'm going to give you an example. Maybe we'll call this a safety tip, if you will. And I learned it from my good friend, John, who lives in Atlanta. And I will always appreciate him telling me this, because every time that I've had to use this little skill or trick, it's always worked. So here's my example. I went to see Madonna in Atlanta, and my plans had all got changed. And I wound up going to see Madonna by myself. And it doesn't matter if you are a 45-year-old man, a 32-year-old woman, a 20-year-old man, whatever. You could always be a target for a criminal. When I arrived at my hotel, I decided to walk in the neighborhood. It was during the day. And so I thought, well, let me just explore this little neighborhood because I'm going to walk from the hotel to the arena. So I'm stepping out and going along the streets and everything and taking in a few of the sights. And I realized that the area between the hotel and the arena isn't exactly the safest area. It felt a little bit sketchy. So here's the way this works. If you are by yourself, what you do is you just sort of tag along with a group of people that are walking in the same direction you're going. Now, when I was going to see the show, it was still daylight and I had no problem. There were thousands of people going in the same direction. But after the show, it was about 1:30 in the morning, and it was a little scary because as we were going along, leaving the venue, and I was heading back toward the hotel, a lot of people kept peeling off, going to separate parking areas to head home. Well, there were 4 guys, and I kind of picked up on them. They were walking in the direction of where my hotel was. So basically, I just tagged right along, right beside them, minding my own business, but it was like I was with them. We did come past a guy that sort of frightened me. He was a little bit scary. He looked like he was ready to hurt somebody, but he didn't dare try it when there were 5 of us. So this works in any situation that you catch yourself in. Find yourself a group and tag along with them if they're going in the direction that you're going. But let me just say this. I do have an instance where that didn't occur. So let's just talk about that for a second. So I was in Philadelphia. I was by myself. It was a business trip, but this was like my second to last night there. And I didn't want to be entertained by anybody that I work with. There was a Mexican restaurant that I wanted to try. It was just down the street from the office. So I went. Right after work, I went over there for a little happy hour and some food, and it was horrible. And so I wound up going to a different restaurant that I'd tried before that was really good. So by the time I got finished, it was dark out. Well, obviously, I'm not an expert in the streets of Philadelphia. So I'm walking back in the direction of the hotel, and I know that I have to turn right to a side street and go down that street to get to the hotel. The rule is always stay in lit streets. Try to stay with people if you can. Well, suddenly I realized that I had missed the street that I was supposed to take, and there were no streetlights. I'm pretty sure I'm in the wrong neighborhood for somebody at 10 o'clock at night. And I was really nervous. And I know it's a bad thing because I think, like they say animals, like dogs in particular, can sense fear. I think humans can too. So I needed to buck up and figure out what to do. The obvious thing to do was to stop, turn around, and go back, which is what I did. It seems like a simple thing, but in the dark with very low lighting, I wound up going again a different direction, the wrong way, and finally come up to a friendly person outside a store, and I just said, "Excuse me, I'm looking for this hotel, and I know it's one of these streets." And he goes, "Oh, it's just right over there. You just missed it. It's right there." So I had went back and forth past the same street twice. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why I didn't remember that. I'll just say this, my next trip to Philadelphia, I had that route memorized totally and practiced. But your mind plays tricks on you too. So when I was walking in that area that was dark, every little pop or a cough in the distance, any kind of scurry or rustle of paper, it really puts you on edge. And I really was on edge. I didn't feel safe again until I got to the hotel. It's really something how when you are nervous or scared, you tend to want to panic. But I try to instill in myself that lesson that my father taught me about assess the situation, be patient, don't panic, try to figure it out and come up with an answer, a response. implement that action and get it done. Even though it was nerve-wracking, I come through it just fine. And I'll just say this. I have felt more unsafe in areas outside the cities than I've ever felt within cities. And I'm going to give you one of my experiences that involves fear out in the country. I was once again on a business trip, and this was where I was driving to the middle part of the state of Tennessee. I'm heading north on this beautiful paved road. It's up into the plateau. It's like mountainous. The trees are just beautiful and thick and lush and green. And this is just a beautiful winding paved road heading toward the Kentucky line. I was using a printed map with directions to locate this business I needed to visit. Obviously, we didn't have Google Maps and we didn't have Siri or Alexa to help us with directions. And I don't think it would have even worked in this area anyway. I doubt even to this day they have Wi-Fi service in parts of that area. It was so remote. I just think it's just really out in the middle of nowhere. So I'm driving along, enjoying the scenery, which really is just the forest, and enjoying the road that's just windy and curvy, and I feel like I'm the only one on it, this 2-lane highway. Well, I'm looking at my instructions there, and I take this turn that I believe is the correct turn, and the road goes from being a paved road to gravel, and I get to thinking, this doesn't feel right, and the road is becoming more and more narrow. And I'm like, there's no way that this recycling facility is on this road. I just don't believe it. Well, finally, it becomes just a single lane road, the kind where you see the tire lines, and in the center is like weeds that have grown. It's just the impression of where the tires have gone back and forth. And I come up to basically a dead end. There's these pieces of wood across this section of the road, and written in red, and I do believe it could have been blood, was a warning that if you try to go past that line, you would be killed. Without hesitation, it was an oh fuck, and I need to get the hell out of here. So put the car in reverse and go as far back as I can till I can find a place to turn around. So there are places out in the country, out in these remote parts of Tennessee, and I'm sure other states too, North Carolina, Alabama, even in Georgia and Mississippi, that if you're an outsider, you may not last long. I managed to get back to the main road and then just go a little farther north, and everything became clear. Just one wrong turn could have led to my ending. And I just wonder, like the movie Wrong Turn, what if those people that had put up that sign were waiting there for me? What if they'd heard my car coming that direction? What if they had jumped me, shot me, and killed me through the window or something? And they would have dragged me off and moved my car somewhere where it would never be found. Nobody would have known other than the people I was going to see and my company that knew that I was going to this location. You're talking about several hundred square miles of area that they would have to search, and I could have been gone forever. Now, of course, I'm taking that to the extreme possibility, but we are talking about Halloween, and I am telling you a true story. The way my mind works, I envisioned being cornered by these people who were total mongoloids or something, that were inbred and would use my dead body as a fuck toy and for food, and suffered and tortured through that, probably eaten alive and never being found, being lost forever. As I'm saying this, you all are listening to me, and in the back of your mind, you agree with me. That could have been actually the outcome of that situation. There are a lot of what ifs in life. There are a lot of risks and chances we take. And I just wonder if some of these horrible cases of murder and disappearances are just an accidental wrong turn. It makes life quite a bit more scary when you think about it like that. And here we are at the end of the first episode for the Halloween season. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been spine-tingly, provocative, or just fun, depending upon how you feel. But remember, be careful what you wish for. You just might get it.